Looking for a fun and informative podcast all about training working dogs? Look no further than the LWDG Pod Dog. This weekly show is hosted by me, Jo Perrott, founder of the Ladies Working Dog Group, and I chat to experienced trainers and experts in the field who will give you helpful tips and advice. Whether you're just getting started or you've been working dogs for years, this podcast will have something for you. So pull up a chair, pour yourself a cup of coffee and tune in to LWDG Pod Dog, and let us help you build a better bond with your best friend. Hello and welcome to another episode of LWDG Pod Dog. This week we're going to be talking about taking training one step at a time, and we're going to be talking loads about transitional behavioural changes for dogs and for humans. Joining me for this amazing podcast is LWDG mindset coach Liddel and also LWDG group expert Samantha Thorneycroft. How are you both today?
I'm good, thanks, Jo. How are you?
I'm good. And how are you, Emma?
I'm doing really well, thank you. I'm looking forward to today.
I'm really looking forward to this conversation as well, because I'm probably one of those people who tends to go at things a little bit like a bull in a china shop, where it's like an all or nothing. I decide to give up chocolate. I don't decide to give up chocolate like a little bit. I decide to give up chocolate forever, and like 3 days later I mention a family bar, and I just try to make things really big really quickly. And I know this is something that some of our members tend to do, where they like try to do everything at once, and it's not good for us or our dogs, is it?
No, from my perspective, certainly from how we deal with things as humans, we don't like change. And if you think about it, most of us have even the same routine every morning, right down to when we feed our dogs, or even right down to the order in which we put our clothes on, which sock we put on first. So we are massively creatures of habit. So having this concept of doing something differently or having to change how we do something can be really daunting. And we tend to go through, like you said, Jo, the all or nothing aspects of it. So it's the same diet. It's a really great way of kind of explaining that, where we go to Tesco's, we throw out all our food that's not very great for us. We buy a whole trolley full of vegetables, we put it on the checkout conveyor belt. We almost want everyone to congratulate us about how fantastic our diet is. And then about 3 days later, we're tucking into a pavlova and then generally being quite hard on ourselves as to why it all went wrong. So yeah, absolutely, change can be terrifying for a lot of people.
Humans tend to enforce then those transitional behavioural changes. If we decide it's a dog training change that we want to make, we do it with them, don't we? We make things different for them on a massive scale.
We do, and it can be anything. Like if we've been, for example, struggling with our dog pulling on a lead, we sort of wake up one morning and we go, right, this is going to change. It's going to change right now. And whilst, yes, we want to put those changes in place, what we often do is, instead of sort of practicing having the dog walking nicely on a lead around your kitchen or around your garden, we take it for a 4-hour walk in a really busy, highly distracting place and expect those changes to all happen all at once, because we woke up that morning and said, today's the day it's going to change. And it doesn't work in that big a transition.
I think so. Like you just said there, we get up in the morning, we're like, right, this is changing. This like all or nothing approach is a little bit like we reach the end of our limit with something. So like we'll go back to the weight loss. For me, I normally decide at some point when I have this like sort of level in my brain of where my weight can never go over. And if I get close to that, I'm like, right, it's all changing today. And like you just said with the dogs, like, right, he's just pulled me down the street for the last time. It's all changing today. Do you think it's like a straw that breaks the camel's back approach that sends us over the edge? Our frustration goes over the edge, and then we just attack it rather than plan these tiny steps?
Absolutely. And I think it's really good to break down actually what happens behind change. And we think change is just an all or nothing thing, but actually mentally we go through stages behind that. So we have this pre-contemplation stage, which is, I want to do things differently. So that's kind of the moment where you wake up and you decide that you're going to be an amazing dog trainer overnight, no matter what you've learned before or no matter what dog you've got. And that's, you've not even consciously made any changes yet. It's just in your brain of like, I want to do something differently. What can self-sabotage at that point, and it's important to understand that at each point of change we can self-sabotage, is we can kind of go into denial around that of like, no, it's not really an issue actually. Is it so bad? Is he really pulling that bad on the lead? Is it, I mean, he only jumped up on one child and knocked them over. Maybe it's not such a difficult thing. Then we go into kind of stage 2, which is contemplating. And for a lot of us, we get stuck there. We contemplate about, I want to do the new thing. I want my dog to be amazing on the lead. I want my dog to be able to do a blind retrieve at God knows what distance. And again, the sabotaging around that is that I don't have time, or maybe it's not that bad, or maybe it's too hard for me to do it. If we get past that, we then go into what we call the preparation phase, which I put my hands up, I absolutely love. That's the bit where you decide you're going to buy all this new kit, you're going to buy this new super duper dummy, you're going to listen to this webinar or podcast, it's going to revolutionize my life, the same as you go and get your conveyor belt of, you know, delicious vegetables. And that's your preparation. And for a lot of people, they're fine in that phase because it's very rewarding. It's exciting. I'm anticipating doing the new thing. Very similar to dogs, I'm sure. And I know Sam will go into this in a bit. And then there's the action part, which is actually, I'm going to try the new thing, whatever that might be, the new dummy, the new technique, the new whatever's going on. The difficulty that happens is the point that comes after that, which is maintenance, which is I have to repeat it potentially until it feels normal or easy. And I can go into transition in a bit and break that down for you, which I'm sure will be very useful. But that's the bit where often we give up, is the maintenance part of it. That's the bit where we struggle. And then if we move out of that, we either go into relapse if it doesn't go too well, because we can't carry on with the maintenance, or we kind of go into recycle where we go back and reevaluate and go, right, what have I done? What didn't go too well? What can I do differently? What do I need to add in? What do I need to take away? Who do I need to talk to be able to get a result? So all of those different things, those 6 different areas, which for us feel like a split second in our brain potentially, are broken down aspects that we have to have in place before we can have change, take action on change, and then make it a more permanent thing in our life.
When you go through those 6 steps, I think I'm listening to it and thinking, I live between preparation and relapse. It's like those 2 parts.
I think I sit in contemplation. I think that's where I stay.
Yeah, and like there is, like, we see contemplation, but it's almost like that overwhelm of what the change is going to be. And Sam, when we're doing this with our dogs, do you think, like, you know, how many people do you turn up to you and go, you know, with a really little pup and go, right, I would like it to be able to do all these things by the end of the class?
Hundreds. It's the amount of times that I have to say to people, you know, don't run before you can walk. This is a young puppy. They have the attention span of a goldfish. You know, you cannot just keep pushing and pushing and pushing. And actually, if you do, to a certain extent, you end up creating problems that, had you just slowed down in the first place, wouldn't have become an issue. Going to what Emma was saying about the maintenance phase, I think that's probably where a lot of people fall down in the dog training bit, because we practice things a few times, we go, yeah, nailed it, brilliant. And then we might go on and start trying to change or introduce something else. But we forget that with all dogs, the key is repetition, repetition, repetition. You can never do too many repetitions of one thing in order to get it right in your mind and the dog's mind. But also, you know, we've woken up and have decided that today's the day. We reached our limit and have gone, right, I've had enough for whatever reason. This is changing today. It's not going to carry on as it was anymore. But the dog hasn't reached that limit. You know, going to pulling on the lead, well, the dog pulls on the lead to the park and then gets freedom. So the dog actually, as far as it's concerned, life is rosy. I pull to get there and then I get a good run around and it's all great fun. So we've got to communicate to our dog that we've made the decision that these changes are going to happen. And then we've got to go through all those stages that Emma spoke about, with the repetition, the consistency, and a whole load of maintenance in order to get the end result.
So, like, when we're chatting about it now, I'm sort of like smiling and it's like this whole thing, isn't it? Like whether it's maintenance, like the basics over and over. Like we talk about it all the time. The people who make like field trial champion, they've done the basics over and over and over, which is, like Emma said, the maintenance section. But a lot of us don't believe that it's the basics over and over again. We think there's like this magic route, or this like way that we don't know about yet, or something that is going to make like everything change in a heartbeat. Do you think that we are hard on ourselves and expect changes, or we think change is going to be like an overnight process? We don't allow for the fact it's a year's process, not a day's.
Absolutely. And the thing is that maintenance, if we're very honest, is boring. It is boring. You know, being on that kind of changed health plan where I can't have takeaway 4 times a week, or going out and doing heel work, you know, repetitively, consistently, boundaried, correcting every time, having that kind of almost zero tolerance, that's boring. I don't want to do that. I want to go to the park and I want to throw some dummies around and make my dog look awesome and have fun with them. So often, depending on what the maintenance thing is, it can be really tedious for us. And so we look for the new novel thing. So, and I'm guilty of it, like everyone else, is we kind of go, well, that's, you know, well, I've done that and I've tried that. So there must be a new technique, a new dummy, a new training aid, a new gimmick, because I'm looking for something novel. I'm looking for something new. I'm looking for something to mix that up. And that's just because I want to do something slightly, because maintenance can be really, really boring.
Do you find that as well with Sam, when you like, somebody's coming to you for the 5th lesson and you're like, okay, heel work, and they're like, no, please, not the same thing again?
I do, yeah, and I will, for the majority of the sessions I do, I will use heel work to sort of get the dog in the mindset that actually today is work. It's not just a free-for-all. So I think heel work is a good way of getting focus, getting engagement, getting eye contact from your dog. And yeah, I get some people that, you know, they're sort of, oh, you know, I really want to work on retrieving. I say, okay, well, we'll just do like 30 seconds of heel work, a minute max. Oh, really? But actually, when you then are watching that heel work, you pick up on little things that need adapting, that need changing. So it was of paramount importance that you did that anyway, not only to get the dog's engagement, but also because there was something that wasn't quite right and it needed tweaking. You know, but you get loads of people that they want to come and they want to do dummy work, or like Emma said, they're like, oh, you know, I bought this new dummy, I want to do some work with it today. And you say, okay, but, you know, did you work on the delivery with the boring dummy that we were using last week? Well, no, because I've got this new one. Okay, but if the dog won't deliver the boring one, it's not going to deliver the new one. So you've got to layer these foundations. You've got to get everything right and go through it step by step, rather than just sort of racing towards that end goal and missing out on important stages and processes in the meantime.
If you look at, like, you know, you're saying about like the retrieve section, even for simple things like, we all know we're meant to drink 2 litres of water. Like the whole world knows it's meant to be drinking 2 litres of water now. It's not a shock. Our phones tell us normally, you know, like watches tell us, everything's telling us. And sometimes I'm thinking, oh my God, I've drank like 500 ml of water today. And I literally have to remind myself that I've got to do the basics. I've got to drink my 2 litres of water. It's really important for my brain health. So do you think that, like, there's something in us that almost fight doing the basics?
Absolutely. And I think the key of that is the transition, isn't it? You know, and certainly, and Sam will be able to probably go into what happens a lot more about that with dogs, but certainly I can see when I am out with my dog, there is a transition to him just being lounging around the house and essentially a pet dog, to then transitioning into a working mindset of, I'm now asking you to do something. We have to work together as a team to achieve that goal. So it's that transition, and that is a new way of thinking. And we seem to think it's just do something different. Well, we're creatures of habit. Dogs are creatures of habit. So just doing something different is not easy. It is one of the most complex processes we have in our brain. And that's why something which seems really simple, like eat less of this food, drink more water, go to sleep at X time, seems like an almost impossible task, no matter how many times our phones bleep at us or our watches tell us or whatever else. And that's because we've got to have a new way of thinking. And I know we spoke about that in the first mindset podcast around laying down those strands that we have of repeated behaviour to then strengthen a behaviour in our brains, let alone our dog brains. So it's about training a new way of thinking. We then have to, what we call in psychology, we call it socialization into a new culture. So going from the person that doesn't drink much water to being someone that drinks quite regularly. So it's about repetition at that point. It's then about leaving that previous culture, potentially, if it's quite an ingrained habit around, I don't do that anymore, I now do this. And that's quite hard, presumably with dogs. And I know Sam will probably give some great examples about when old habits kind of creep back in. And then it's dealing with the actual transition process itself. It's not, we don't go from A to B without a bit in the middle. That gap in the middle is the transition process. And that's the bit actually where, certainly from my perspective, as humans trying to integrate a new habit, and especially for handlers, that's where we struggle, because when we're trying a new habit, we have what we call initial incompetence, because we're learning something new. So we don't do it brilliantly to start off with, because we've got to train that new habit. And that's when we find we give up. We have that imposter syndrome. We say we can't do it. We're not good enough. It's not working. We're not doing it right. So it's that gap in the middle that is so very crucial. So a really good analogy that I use when I work with people is, imagine you've got a garden that for whatever reason you don't tend to very well, and you walk the same path to the shed every day. That will become a really well-worn path, and it will be very easy to walk in a direct line to that shed. And the rest of the garden will grow up and you'll have brambles and all sorts of other things. So that's how our mind thinks. So what we're essentially asking our mind to do is go, I know that path's really well worn, but what I'd like you to do is go through the brambles, around the apple tree at the back, and then go to the same shed to get hopefully a better outcome. Well, that's really hard, because I don't want to go through the brambles because it's painful. So what will happen, like creatures of habit that we all are, is I'll slip to going down that path again. And it might be, and we'll start off with maybe, I don't know, say for example, 3 out of 5 times I'll pick the new path, but 2 out of 5 I'll still pick the old path. Well, that's when the imposter syndrome, I can't do this, I'm not good enough, see, I still did the old thing, rather than going, actually 3 times I went down the new path, and then that will become 4, and then that will become 5. And before we know it, we have rewired our brain. That path will then become well-worn and much easier to walk down. And the path that we've not used will then get covered with brambles and not be used anywhere near as much. So that's exactly how we work when we think. And so instead of actually, when we kind of fail potentially, or relapse and go back to that old habit of letting our dog pull on the lead, or do you know what, I only drank 1 litre of water today. Okay, that's fine. But you can start again now. That's fine. You can start afresh. You can take that more difficult path again and make that a well-worn path for the future.
I love the path. What is the word? You know what I mean. But I like that, because he's quite right, isn't it? But you are right. We won't see the 3 times as being any sort of success, even though it is. And Sam, do you see that, like with people, they don't give themselves time to learn the new way?
I do, and I use a similar pathway analogy as well. And I'll say to people, if, for example, you've got a dog that has fallen into a habit of chasing rabbits, and it's in its mind, it's got this pathway of chasing rabbits is really rewarding. And when I see a rabbit, I chase them, and that's what happens. And then when we try and go down the route of correction and education and sort of teaching the dog, no, we don't chase the rabbits. You can look at it, you can watch it go, but I've taught you an alternative behavior, I've taught you an alternative pathway. This is the one we need to follow. And at that point, we've got 2 minds that are fighting against each other, because it's not just us changing our own mindset, it's us trying to change our dog's mindset. So we need to put the dog on the new path, and we need to do various different sort of training techniques and corrections and education to teach the dog that old pathway, that's the one that now needs to get overgrown with all those brambles, and we need to forget it. We need to take this new one. Excuse me. And trying to get the consistency, because to a certain extent, the dog is going to fight back against this. It wants to go and chase that rabbit. It finds that really rewarding, and it has no reason in its own brain to not do that, because it's great fun. And then it's got us going, no, we don't do that anymore. So we've got to be really consistent in we don't take that path anymore. we take this one. And again, that's where things can fall down, because if a couple of times the dog goes, I'm sorry, mum, I know what you're saying, but stuff you on this occasion because I just can't help myself. You know, and it can then give the human the feeling of, I'm not good enough, or I just can't get this, I just can't. And then when you've got those feelings of self-doubt, you do end up sort of going, oh, well, all right, well, maybe we'll try something different, or we'll leave that one for now. So yeah, you definitely see it with dogs and humans when training as well.
What you just described it, if you think about it, the dog is like an external version of our mind, isn't it? In our minds, we have two different fights. Outside of our minds, we have two different fights. But also, like you just said, the dog doesn't even maybe want to change. It is that sort of enforced thing. And that is a little bit, I think, in our own minds. Like, as many times as I give up chocolate, oh my God, literally, I could, if you went back through Facebook and write giving up chocolate into a search bar for me, it's there about 52 times over the last 15 years. But there is a part of me that really doesn't want to give it up. So I have that sort of fight internally all the time. How do we help our ladies who they've got changes they want to make? They want their dog to walk to heel beautifully, or not chase the rabbit, or drink the 2 litres of water, whatever it be. The behavioural change is going to be something that they want to see it being a permanent change. So like, not like, you know, some people, for example, we keep on going back to weight loss, but all the ladies will understand. You might be going on holidays and you think, right, I'll just tighten up for 4 weeks before we go, and then afterwards I'm fine. It's not like a temporary change, but a permanent behavioural change in themselves or their dogs. How can they make it last? Because I know there's loads of ladies who are laughing as they listen to this, but they're also saying, yeah, but I've been trying to do that for 5 years now, and I'm still not any further forward, regardless of what I try.
Absolutely. And I think we have to look at, what is the goal? We have to remind ourselves, why am I doing this? And that can be anything. Why am I asking my dog to do this? What's the long-term goal with them? Why am I looking to change my health? Why am I looking to change my diet? And you have to hold why you're doing that, and almost remind yourself every day, that is why I'm doing that. You know, so whether that's potentially going, right, I am, yeah, absolutely working on heel work every day, although I find it really tedious and boring, and I'm sure my dog finds it really tedious and boring, because actually in a period of time, X weeks or X months, I want to be able to take my dog for a walk without feeling like I'm going to get dragged down the road, or I want to be able to go for a walk with my family and not be constantly focused on my dog the entire time, where actually I can engage with other people around me a little bit more. It's same for any kind of health change. You know, I would always say, hold in mind the main aim of why you're doing this, because otherwise the short-term win is always going to win. The short-term goal will always win. So the chocolate is going to win over the, whereas if I'm reminding myself, actually, I want to get to a healthy body weight because I want to be able to go for a 5-mile walk with my dog once every month, or because I have an underlying health condition that I want to improve, or because I know it's good for my mental health, or I know it's good for my emotional health. Actually, if I have that in mind every time I'm looking at whatever change I'm going to do, that's going to be much more meaningful. The fact is, we lose it out of our head, we lose it out of our mind, and that quick win is so much more important. That quick urge of like, do you know what, I feel uncomfortable, so I'm going to do that, or I'm going to eat that, or do you know what, I'm just going to let him drag me to the park because it's just, I can't be doing with it today. That long-term goal of, but this is what I'm looking for, this is what I'm looking for out of my relationship with my health, my body, my dog, whatever it might be. If I hold that main aim, and also not be hard on myself on the journey through it. So again, if you're setting yourself up to fail, if you've thrown away every bit of unhealthy food in your house, if actually you normally engage in eating food like that every day, to go cold turkey is going to be really, really hard for you. So I would say to somebody, like, let's say, for example, you want to make a really simple change, like you want to not have sugar in your tea or coffee. You want to reduce sugar in your diet. I wouldn't say throw away all your chocolate, throw away all your sweets, throw away everything else. I would say, right, do you know what? You have, I don't know, 2 spoons of sugar in your cup of tea or coffee. How many times a day? Oh, 3 times a day. So you have 6 teaspoons of sugar a day. Okay, can the first 2 have 2 teaspoons of sugar? And can you do that for a week? And then the next 2 teas and coffees, for the next 2 weeks, can you make that just 1 teaspoon of sugar? So actually, you've halved the amount of sugar you've had. already. So it is about those incremental changes. And that's so key. You know, we are still animals at the end of the day. So making sure that whatever our changes are, they are incremental. We're going to set ourselves up to succeed rather than fail. And it's exactly the same. Any form of suggestion that we put in our brain, if I sit here, you know, in front of you two ladies and go, right, what I would like you to do is I don't want you to think about a polar bear. I don't want you to think about a polar bear dancing on a ball. And I don't want you to think about a polar bear singing a song while dancing on a ball and holding an umbrella. Those are going to be the things you're thinking of. So as soon as we deny ourselves something by saying, I'm not going to have any chocolate, or I'm not going to do this, we're going to want it. Rather than reminding ourselves, the reason I'm choosing not to do this is because I want this as an outcome in the longer term. So it's not denying yourself, it is a choice. And we do much better with choices than feeling like we're denying ourselves something.
So Sam, do you think, like where Emma's touched there on incremental changes, is that the mindset we need to have when we're training our gun dogs?
Well, I'm sure it is, but I currently have an image of a polar bear dancing on a ball holding an umbrella in my head.
and singing.
So yes, it is absolutely incremental changes. You know, you just because your dog can stay in a sit position while you stand next to it for 20 seconds doesn't mean it's going to be able to stay in a sit position whilst you walk 200 meters across a busy dog park, jumping up and down and throwing its favorite ball around. You know, we've got to do everything incrementally. So that comes back to the 3Ds, which we use a lot in dog training: distance, duration, and distraction. We need to increase them one at a time, ideally, and also very, very gradually, and work through it step by step, so that we are making the whole process easier for the dog to understand. We're not making too big a leap and then the dog's failing. We've got to set it up to succeed as much as we possibly can, so that it has the joy just as much as we have the joy. And obviously, the more you enjoy doing something, the more you're rewarded for doing something, the more you're going to do it. So yeah, incremental changes, step by step, and don't run.
It's really interesting what you said there, because in the group, somebody wrote this week that they just started doing the hot mishandler course, and they thought their sit was great until they asked their dog to sit for a duration without like interacting with them, and they realized that they can only get 20-second sits before they have to reward again. And they were like, I hadn't even thought about it. If somebody said, does your dog sit well, I would have said yes. But it is that thing, isn't it? We think something's like sorted, nailed, because we see in brief glimpses of that behavior, but we haven't really built, like Emma said, that well-trodden pathway of sit means sit until I ask you to do something else.
I think exactly that. And also, when we're thinking about it from a dog training point of view, it's very easy to park something. So we can get our dog to sit and to stay for 20 seconds and we go, right, I've done that, brilliant, I'll move on to the next thing. And the next thing could be retrieving, it could be hunting, it could be, you know, a recall from a distraction, it could be anything else. But in our mind, we've done sit stay. So we just don't go back to it. You know, and we've got to remember, particularly when we're working with another living brain, that we do have to keep going back to basics and keep repeating and keep reminding and keep being consistent. Just because your dog is capable of doing 1,000-yard retrieve, stopping twice, redirecting, and having other retrieves on the way, doesn't mean that it remembers to walk nicely on a lead, or that it can't chase a rabbit when you're on your family walk on a weekend, if you don't still consistently practice those basics and foundations.
I've been, as you know, learning to play the piano, and I've been doing really well, and I've been doing it every single day. And like for Christmas, I went from a keyboard to a proper piano, but I couldn't have it delivered because we meant to move. We still have moved, so we were like, right, we're just going to have that piano this year. The person's not going to hold it up for us anymore. So I gave my keyboard to my son, and I was like, right, you have that at Nan's with you, and I'll have this piano. So I must have given it to him maybe a week and a half ago. So not long. And I was up there the other day, and my gran was there, bless her, she's 90. And my mother was like, play the piano. I was like, please, no, I'm nowhere near good enough to play the piano. But I sat down, and none of it made sense. And I was like, I can't read the music. I don't know what I'm meant to be pressing. And I'm thinking, that was just like a week and a half. I'm not doing a little bit every day, because I wasn't doing hours and hours. I was doing like 10 or 15 minutes every day, enough to reinforce my learning. It must have been. And then it was a real big shock to me how much I had forgotten or lost in that such short time. And for our dogs, it must feel the same, mustn't it?
It does, yeah. And you know, I look at it when we were allowed to start going back out training after COVID, for example. You know, I got to the end of sort of 2 or 3 hours of back-to-back lessons, and I could barely string a sentence together. And this is something that I've essentially done for, I don't know, 15 years, day in, day out. I stand in front of clients and I train their dog with them. But I had a period where I couldn't physically do that. And my brain just went, you can forget it, sunshine. You know, and so dogs are the same, because if you don't practice things, if you don't remind them what the stop whistle is, if you don't go through your straight line retrieves, you know, and then all of a sudden you just say to them, right, go and get that retrieve that's 200 yards away, and you send them across the middle of a wide open field, if they've not done it for ages, their line won't be straight. It will be a bit wobbly. They might look at you for some help and some direction. They will most likely remember that they've got to go out and pick something up. So they'll probably get there eventually, especially if you've got a really, really driven dog, but they forget the finer elements of what it was that we're asking of them.
And you know, we were talking about these sort of forgetting behaviours. Is this one of the things that we face with our changes as well? Is like, if we do manage to do a change for a set amount of time and think, okay, yes, I have managed to change this now, this is ingrained in me, that little bit of time away, we revert back.
Absolutely. We call it an interrupter. So a really good example would be, I don't know, if you've got a normal morning routine that you have around, I don't know, when you get up, or whether you, I don't know, go for a run before you go to work, or you do some meditation, or whatever that might be. And then something happens to interrupt that. For example, you go away for the weekend, or you go on holiday, or you move house, or that has to not be done 1 or 2 days because, you know, someone's become ill or something like that. That interrupter, we know that if it generally goes for more than 3 days, it becomes very hard for us to then bring that back in again. We kind of fall out of habit. And there's lots of theories about how long it takes to form a habit. Some people say it's 30 days. Some people say it's 90 days to really, really ingrain a new habit. So if you think that, you know, life does get in the way, we do have interrupters. You know, life isn't the same every day. It doesn't always go smoothly. But absolutely, at some point, we have to be mindful that if something has interrupted that habit, how am I going to get that back? And that's just generally about being conscious about it. Like, I've noticed I didn't do this today. So I've noticed that actually for the past 3 weeks, I've been drinking my 2 litres of water. And I've noticed that because I had to rush out because my son was ill, and then I picked him up from school, and then the dog threw up on the carpet or whatever else, I've not been able to do that. It's good to just notice it, not beat yourself up for it, which is what we tend to do, is go, I've just noticed that. I don't want that to become a long-term interrupter. That's just a day for me. And tomorrow I'm going to start with that activity again.
For me, that's one of the reasons. And we've put up an article today for society members about journaling. But for me, that's one of the reasons I journal, because if I journal, I keep things at the forefront of my mind of why I'm doing them. Whereas if I don't journal, a goal I set myself maybe, or an intention I set myself a few days ago, a lot of life has got in the way since, and I might have forgotten what it was I was trying to achieve. So do you think that by journaling, or, you know, vision boards, like having something, or even if it's like a picture of a well-behaved dog on the fridge, it's just something to remind you what you're intending to do?
Absolutely. For me, I mean, I'm a big journaler, as you know, Jo. It's a big part, and anyone that follows me on Instagram will see me posting about journaling quite a lot. And so for me, I think it's really, really key. And that could literally be a voice note on your phone that you listen to every morning. It could be could be something that you do have as a really nice, beautiful journal that you really look forward to writing in every day. Not everyone is the same in how they feel about that, but it is about that morning kind of mindset reminder about, before I go into doing whatever it might be, work, dog training, etc., what are my reminders? What is kind of my plan for today? And there was something that Sam brought up, which I thought was really interesting about dog training, about kind of rewarding dog training, about, you know, rewarding, increasing a behavior in a dog, whether it's a good thing or a bad thing, whether they get fined, you know, chasing your hair rewarding, or whether actually doing something for us and then getting praise as a reward. What I found really interesting about what Sam was saying there is that actually often, so if we find something is not rewarding, we decrease the behavior, the same as we see that in our dogs, is actually, as dog trainers, if we do not enjoy the dog training, we are likely to decrease it as well, because we don't find it rewarding. So again, it's about that similar mentality around, if I am finding dog training very hard because I'm going through a difficult point with my dog, or I'm struggling with my mindset around it, or whatever else, I'm probably going to make more excuses, is the honest answer. I'm probably going to go, oh, do you know what, I'll do that tomorrow, or do you know what, we'll just cut the dog's training session short, or actually I'll do this, or I'll buy myself a new dummy and that'll solve the problem, or whatever else. So actually, it's not only about what the dog finds rewarding and making sure that ideally that's a positive thing and that's what we want them to do, but actually, if I don't find what I'm doing rewarding, I'm likely to do it less as well.
And do you find that, Sam, where people are struggling with their dog training, they sort of fall out of love with the whole process?
Absolutely. And it can be, you know, the whole element of dog training, or it can be specific bits of dog training. And the most common one is heel work, because lots of people find it really, really boring. You know, for me, I find heel work can be one of the most rewarding things you can get from a dog, particularly when you've got it right. You know, and it should be like a dance. You're working together, you're working in partnership, and you should get this feeling of, oh, wow, this is amazing from it. But so many people don't. And I think, you know, because they don't enjoy it, they find it difficult. So they sort of go, you know what, I'm going to park that one for the day. I've had a really bad day at work. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to do something else, because it's then not practiced. Obviously, it doesn't get any better. And it's very easy to then you go from that one day, I'm not going to do it today, to, oh, actually, no, I've had a really other tough day and I'm not going to do it today either. And all of a sudden 3 weeks have gone by and you go, well, you know, it wasn't great, but, oh, well, it's been such a long time now. Do you know, I think I'll start tomorrow. And it's really easy to put things off till tomorrow. And of course, tomorrow never comes. So instead of parking it and putting it to one side when you're finding something difficult, I think we've got to find ways that we can make it easier for both ourselves and the dog. So maybe we lower the criteria, or we go to a different area, or we say, do you know what, I'm going to build in some heel work in amongst retrieving, which we all find a lot more exciting. But instead of just having a dog sat and then sent for a retrieve, maybe I'm going to heel it forward 3 paces and then I'm going to sit it and send it. Or maybe I'm going to heel it away from the dummy for 5 paces and then I'm going to sit it and then I'm going to send it. So we're still doing the fun activity. We've just injected a little bit of what we find really boring in there. So we're working on it and the fun stuff, and we're combining the two, which makes us as a pair, you know, us and the dog, more likely to get success.
And like that's like the whole like all or nothing, that's just going straight to the nothing. But then if you think about it, when we did over Christmas the 24-day challenge, they were like the tiniest challenges in the world, and the whole group erupted with the most excitement I've ever seen in the group, as a group working on a group project of like, oh my god, I healed my dog whilst the kettle boiled, and everybody was like feeling this buzz of success and all these things, and they were the tiniest little change, weren't they? Do you think if we approached everything we did with just like these tiny little bits, like don't make them big things, make them these tiny bits, we would all find it more rewarding when we actually achieve these little tiny movements forward?
Absolutely. And I think bringing back to the journaling that you were saying, Jo, is part of it. Is not only, we're not only looking at what our dog finds rewarding, but what do I find rewarding when I train my dog? I'm a human. I want to keep up the motivation. What do I like doing with my dog? And how can I build both of those in? And when we go back to those kind of 6 concepts of change, if I have those right, and I am really clear on what those are, as well as the long-term goal that I've got, I am much more likely to keep that maintenance going, and I'm much less likely to kind of relapse and kind of have that 3-day gap and then going, oh, it's been too difficult, I've kind of fallen out of that habit now. So absolutely, what do I find rewarding, as well as ideally my dog, because I want my dog to enjoy my training, but making that a small thing, a small manageable thing, so I'm much more likely to keep the maintenance of that action going.
So isn't it, like, we're talking, like, I know we keep on hitting certain things, like we talk about heel work in this because, like, heel work is most people's demons, but then you look like when Charlotte was part of the Uncanny Club and you went to, like, obedience, like you go to shows and you see, like, obedience classes, like those people work so hard for the perfect heel, and I'm like, they're like thriving on it, like loving teaching their dog to be that connected to them. And then this is, like, I don't know, I suppose observation in the gun dog world who like, do I have to make it heel? What is it in our mindset that makes, like, you know, we talk about it's boring, but why can't we seem to fall in love, do you think, Sam, with heel work?
I think a lot of it is the mechanics of a person's brain. So, you know, you get someone that absolutely loves maths and, you know, would really get into algebra, and you get other people that love literacy, you know, and I think if you're of a gun dog mindset, if you're a country person, you want to go out working your dog, you know, your end goal is to be working as a team with your dog in the field, retrieving pheasants as a peg dog, flushing them in a beating line. However you're working your dog, the heel work isn't a really important element of that further control as a bigger picture. If you really delve into it, then I believe, yes, it is of paramount importance, because I will use heel work to get that engagement, to build that bond with the dog as well. So if I've got the bond and the engagement when the dog is close to me, next to me at heel, then I've got a better chance of success of getting it when the dog is then working further afield. But because we've got that end goal where the dog is working away from us, in our mind, we can sort of compartmentalize and say, well, when it's retrieving out there or when it's on the beating line, it's not gonna be next to my heel, so I don't need to practice heel work. When obviously the reality is, between drives and everything else, we're gonna need our dog to walk nicely and to not be running through the next drive whilst we're just trying to get to it.
I think part of that as well, and I think Sam's made a really good point there, about our minds about it. And I think we also have to look at, if I throw out, I don't know, a really long retrieve and it's a blind for my dog and I've got people watching and they don't know anything about gun dog training, and I send my dog in for it and it comes back and it's beautiful and it presents and it's all, they think that's really cool. It looks like a really cool trick that I can do with my dog. Now, if I then, and I put hours and hours and hours into it, heel work, have my dog to heel beautifully around a field, people that don't understand dogs will go, so? Now, don't get me wrong, I think if we did that in the LWDG, we'd probably go like, oh my God, that's amazing. You know, we'd be like, that's a fantastic video, because we know the amount of effort and tears and pain and everything else it gets into having that lovely position with our dogs. But to people outside of kind of a dog training community, it's not that flashy. For us, it's flashy for us, absolutely. Like if my dog is walking to heel, I feel like I'm the king of the world at that moment, because I'm so grateful that, you know, we're actually in sync and he's listening to what I'm saying. But I know to someone else when I'm walking down the road, they just think I'm taking my dog for a walk. So I think sometimes, again, it's about that reward, isn't it? About, it looks way better if I'm using a dummy launcher, firing off this dummy into the air, and my dog goes off and brings it back and presents it to me beautifully. I feel like I should get a round of applause for that. Where actually, for me personally, I feel like if my dog does a bit of good heel work for about 2 minutes, I want a round of applause for that, because that's far harder for me to do.
Do you know, you say that and I'm literally thinking, maybe we should have like an LWDG heel work badge. Think, guys, we have these like badges. I know for myself, I'm very much pat on the head type of girl. You know, I'm not even financially driven. Like, money's great, everybody needs it to live, but I find, you know, somebody saying well done far more rewarding than my pay packet. So I think what you're saying is right, isn't it? Like, the retrieve in some ways is rewarding in itself. When your dog goes out and gets it, comes back, gives it to you beautifully, that it feels so good inside. it is the reward. Whereas heel work's not rewarding in the same way, which is probably why we find ourselves with people who spend hours and hours on certain skills, but very little on the ones they're not given. Like, you know, if my dog sits for 2 minutes and I'm sitting watching him, I'm not that impressed. Even though it's something I've got to do, a tick in a box, it's not a rewarding or exciting job. Do you think there are ways we can trick our mind into thinking they're rewarding?
Oh, that's a really good question. And I think if we could do that, I mean, we'd solve anyone's motivational issues. I think it is about what we find rewarding. And I think absolutely sometimes we get confused about what someone else would find rewarding. So kind of that idea of, look at what my dog can do, isn't it great? So someone can go, oh, Emma, you're fantastic at what you've done with your dog. And actually, what really is rewarding is overcoming obstacles. We know that we will covet something much more when we've worked hard for it. So, for example, my 2 dogs, I've got a very young gun dog. He's very inexperienced. He's 14 months. He's very immature. I am a novice handler, so I am very immature in that way in my knowledge. And I've got an 11-year-old rescue, exactly the same crossbreed. Now, I have not had any issues, bizarrely, with him in retrieving. I could throw out a dummy all day and he plods along, he picks it up and brings it back to me. And I didn't realise how good I had that, if I'm honest, until I got my second dog. I was like, oh, every dog just does this. This is fine. And so I took that for granted. I didn't find that rewarding because I didn't have to work for it. Now, my young dog, actually, it's taken a long time to get him to find retrieving rewarding, and now he's switched onto it. It's the best thing ever for him. But when he brings a dummy back compared to when my older dog brings a dummy back, I get a different reward because I've worked hard for that one. The other one was kind of a bit of a given. So again, it's about maybe us thinking about, yes, do you know what? When we get that moment where our dog is walking to heel and they are glancing up at us, and we're having that beautiful moment where actually handler and dog are working in perfect coordination. And bear in mind, both of us are agreeing to that relationship in that moment. The dog is agreeing to work with us. The dog is looking to us for guidance and support, you know, and we are looking to work and support to allow the dog to know exactly what we want from it. That perfect point of harmony, that's a fantastic reward. And I think sometimes if we bring that maybe in a little bit more, rather than looking kind of for the flashy stuff, we might find that those little moments where we go, do you know what, actually, I am going to do 10 minutes of heel work before I go and cook the dinner because I want to have that moment with my dog. I want to be able to find that rewarding. And I want to be able to show the whole of the LWDG that for 10 minutes, my dog actually walked to heel. So if you want that external reward, I mean, we're probably the best group of people to do that because we know how hard those, what seemingly mundane tasks of training your dog to do are. So we will go, that is absolutely amazing because we know what it's like. So yeah, it's about trying to find that balance.
Yeah, and I think also we need to realise that as people that are training dogs, the more we put in, the more we're going to get out. So the more we interact with our dog as we're going, and I don't mean just waffling at it as you're walking along, but you know, if you're wanting to walk, if you're taking your dog for a walk and you're taking it to the pub, if you give your dog some interaction, and that interaction could be that you've just done a couple of turns, you've done a bit of stop start, you've varied your pace, or you've given it a real excitable verbal praise as it gave you that eye contact, your dog is it's more likely to then give you that engagement. Whereas if you just stroll to the pub on the phone to your mates and whatever, it's not going to give you anything back. Why would it? If we're not giving it anything, why should it give us anything? So we've also got to keep that in our mindset. You know, if we're taking our dog out for a mooch around the lake and we don't speak to it from start to finish, why should it want to come and do something that's going to make us happy? You know, in the dog's mind, and it's completely true, it's going to get more reward, it's going to get more happiness if it chases the ducks. And if we're not paying it any attention, it's not going to bother. So the more we put in, the more you get out. And that goes down to heel work as well. And I think sometimes we're better placed, even if we know that we don't enjoy it, to put on this external appearance that actually we do, you know. And if we have a bit of a spring in our step and a bit of joviality about us, the dog will find it more fun too, which means that as a pair, we come away going, do you know what? Our relationship, I feel really wholesome today because we cracked it. We had this fantastic session, which then, because we all found it rewarding, makes us more likely to A, want to practice and repeat it, but B, more likely to get the same result later on down the line.
I feel there's a future podcast there all about mobile phones and training working gun dogs, because I think me and Em talked about this last week a little bit. Our obsessions with our phones takes away from all parts of our life, but I definitely know walking the dog, I sometimes disconnect from the dog because I'm connected to the phone, checking something, you know, notifications going off, whatever. But yeah, I think that's definitely one that we can hit. Thank you very much both for an amazing podcast as always. I love our chat so much. I forget that we're actually doing a podcast, and I just think, oh my god, we just like learn so much. I hope all the ladies listening have enjoyed. I hope you're loving the fact that we are looking more at the versions of dog training when you bring in mindset, because we definitely think within the group that that's something we can work on loads. We've got amazing dog trainers, people like Sam, people like Claire, Jem, who are there to help you all the time with your skills. We want you to keep on working with Emma and myself and working on your mindset and pulling them both together so we can all up level. And we'll definitely look to see if we can get some Girl Guide badges around here work too. It might be fun. I hope you've all enjoyed. Thank you both for being fantastic guests on this podcast. As always, we love chatting to you, and I know our ladies do too. Please send us your comments if you're loving it. Put up our link, is hashtag LWDG Poddog on your posts, and we will share them. And until next week, have a fabulous week. Thank you for listening to LWDG Poddog with me, Jo Perrott. Now, we all know training a dog takes time, energy and patience, but our lives can be really, really busy. Don't worry, the LWDG has got you covered. Join us for our free planning workshop where we'll show you how to use short 10-minute training sessions each day to fast forward your dog's education. Our experts have years of experience in training dogs and will help you get started on the right foot. Register now and start making progress with your furry friend today. Go to our Facebook page, the Ladies Working Dog Group, and click on the pinned post, or visit www.thelwdg.com.